Well, hello, everybody. This is the podcast Helping the Brave. And this is my first time doing it. So apparently, I don't know the the intro video. So we might do that at the end and have it as an exit video. So
I like
today,
that.
um, my girlfriend Julie is coming on board to talk about her veteran story. And she, like me, is an Army veteran. And I am just excited that everybody gets to be a part of the conversation. And so Julie has been in this area for a long time, but talk to us about your story or your transition story from the Army.
Okay, thanks. Hey, thanks for having me, Amy. Excited to be here. Um, so I was in the Army a long time ago, active duty in 87, 88, 89. And when I was at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and I had actually talked about reenlisting, and I wanted to talk to one of the reenlistment NCOs, and they said, not yet, later on. And so then when they finally came to talk to me, I said, well, it's kind of late. I'm going to go ahead and get out. So they said, okay, here's your transition or your ETS process. And, it's just a couple sheets of paper for you to get checked off. And did you talk to somebody about a resume where you just spent an hour or so with some coach or professional back then? And then they said, all right, good luck. And that was it. That was my whole transition. I went from Fort Polk back to Salem, Oregon, and I was at a loss, so much so that I reached out to my recruiter and worked for a little while in the recruiting office, still wearing my fatigues, just because they needed some admin help, although that wasn't my job in the Army. But so I did that for them for a little bit. And I was actually considering re-enlisting. I was in the reserves, but I was considering going back active duty when a friend of mine said, hey, you should really go look at State Farm Insurance. That's where I work and my parents work, and they're looking for some good help. So that's the only thing that stopped me from returning to to active duty was interviewing with State Farm and getting hired there. So I just spent the last 31 years working for State Farm. And then I was in the reserves for about 7 years. And then after 2 kids, I decided that I would go inactive reserve. So
Very cool. So what did you do exactly for the Army?
So when I was on active duty, I was a radio operator. I was really sort of tentative about going in. And that was one of the MOSs back then where you didn't have to sign a long-term contract. So I thought, well, I'll check it out and see if I like it. And so I did that. And then when I got out, my unit was a drill sergeant unit. So I was actually a drill sergeant in the reserves, and I pushed both male and female troops at Fort Dix, Fort Jackson, Fort Leonard Wood. I'm trying to think. We would do weekend drills with kids that had enlisted and hadn't gone to basic training yet. And so they would come spend 3 days with us, and we would give them a little taste of what basic training was going to be like for them for those 3 days. So those kids, by the time they got to basic training, they knew theoretically, as long as they remembered, but they knew how to march and get information. They knew essentially drill and ceremony and how to address their superior NCOs and officers. So
very good. So it always asks. He asks, what do you use today that you learned from the Army?
Yeah, there's probably a couple things that I still use today that I learned in the Army. And one of the things I actually had to, so probably the funny one is that the sort of the scissor hands, like you don't point because that's kind of rude, but you can do this. So when I'm very animated and perhaps a little upset, then the sword hand comes out and this is what I'm doing to you. And that's how you know that Julie is about to lose it. And then, but the one that's not funny that it's been really helpful was just learning to speak directly to people, right? So I was fairly timid when I went into the Army, and I definitely not a rule breaker. Didn't want to get in trouble. did not like to be yelled at. And so when I went into the Army, learning how to funnel those emotions, right, especially in basic training, and have them use them towards the good versus losing your stuff right there in front of the drill sergeant and then getting in more trouble. That was helpful. When I went to work at State Farm in the corporate atmosphere, one of the things they weren't accustomed to is having somebody come up and say, Amy, I understand you're upset with me. Let's work it out. Because if you were that direct with them, they didn't know how to handle it. So I guess that's one of the things I learned, and that as I moved up the ranks at State Farm, that was the expectation I also set for my team. And I think that that really prepared them well for leadership and for their careers, because, being direct and not mean, but just direct, like, let's get to the bottom of whatever the issue is, good or bad, and move on, was helpful for me. And people knew that they could trust me to be honest and direct, and then teaching my teams or coaching my teams in that direction helped them as well. So
very cool. You have a really cool sticker behind you. Do you want us to tell us about that?
I do. This would be my Travis Manion logo. So Travis Manion Foundation, for those that are not familiar with it, Amy has been associated with them for some time. I've been associated with them for 2 months and a few days. And it is a veteran serving organization that was named after a Marine that was killed by a sniper in Iraq in 2007, and Travis Manion. And his mantra, or his ethos, his entire life was always, if not me, then who? And when Travis was killed, his mom started a nonprofit foundation to really carry on that legacy of all our fallen heroes, their integrity, their work ethic, everything that was great about them, all our fallen heroes and our veterans today, their leadership qualities. This was created to help carry that on and keep that legacy going. So now we work with veterans that are transitioning, or veterans like me that I transitioned 25 years or more ago. But now I can come back and I can work with other veterans, providing us a purpose where we can go out and work with the youth, create, really help build character in the youth of today. Some statistics to just kind of throw at you. 55% of veterans leaving the service feel lost and disconnected. They feel like they've lost their mission or their purpose in life. And then 1 in 3 kids feels like they don't have a positive role model. So if you have these disconnected veterans and you have these kids without a positive role model, then what better thing than to bring them together so that this veteran can mentor these kids. And really, it's a sort of a mutually beneficial relationship, because these kids help mentor the mentors, the veterans, and they both benefit from this. So I get the privilege of really meeting veterans like Amy and seeing her work with the kids, seeing how she draws them out, seeing how she can really have a positive impact on their lives, how she can carry on the legacy of other fallen soldiers that are, the veterans that are no longer with us, by volunteering. Like a couple weekends ago, we went out to the cemetery in Buckley, Washington, and we helped clean tombstones, headstones, so that when families came to visit the cemetery on Memorial Day, it was all clean and ready for them. So we get to do amazing things like that. You shut me up when you want me to, Amy, because there's so much going on that I could talk about this forever. Operation Legacy is something else that we do. And the big nationwide Operation Legacy project we had this year was with not everybody being able to travel, and with Arlington Cemetery not being fully open to everyone. Travis Manion offered, we would love to put these flags on by the tombstone of your fallen hero, whether it's a battle buddy, a brother, a sister, a son, a daughter, whatever it is. We will take a picture of that and send that to you, since you cannot be at the graveside this Memorial Day. So we had 300 volunteers that showed up at Arlington Cemetery over the course of those 3 days, put 4,000 flags in front of in front of the grave markers and then sent pictures and just remembrance comments back to the family members or the battle buddies of the person that was being honored. So that was an amazing event, if you will, because it just touched so many different hearts of folks that actually were on site and then folks that, couldn't make it. So
Travis Manion is nationwide?
It is nationwide. We're in 40 states right now, 40 of the states, although we're moving fairly quickly to get into all 50 states. It's just a matter of contacting our managers that are in different regions, connecting with the veterans in that area, inspired civilians, and connecting with the groups that, are looking for somebody to come in and mentor their youth. I work with a number of different, like a variety of organizations. I have high schools that I work with, JROTC that I get to support. I have some schools that are for high risk kids that cannot go to public school anymore, where we go in and help out with that. I'm meeting with Tacoma Rescue Mission to help with some of their youth group activities and get the Character Does Matter program going with those. So it's all over the place. We work with Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCA,
Very cool. I agree. So I did do mentoring this last year with the Travis Manion, and we worked with, I think it was cool to do things even out of the area where we would do Zoom Character Does Matter with Boys and Girls Clubs across the US. And it really, it helped me really be grateful for teachers, the whole having kids trying to get their attention and keep their attention, and just the funny things that happen on Zoom. And I thought it was very, it was good to me, like, because I love to volunteer and to see youth and see things still happening. But it was a little bit humorous in the constraints that we had to work with.
Yes.
And just, and I appreciated the workers at the Boys and Girls Club because they were doing their very best, and kids are fidgety, and that's all good because that's part of being a kid, right?
Yeah. Yep. And you totally draw on your flexibility, right?
Right. And the creativity.
Yes.
I think so. I do. So if a veteran were listening to this from another state and they wanted to find out more about Travis Manion, how would they do that?
Yeah, just head to travismanion.org. And if you scroll, you join the mission and let them know, what city and state you're in, and you'll be contacted by the manager of that region. If you scroll to the bottom of the website, you'll see the map of all the different places where we are. And, I think to your point, Amy, we don't even have to be physically in Oregon or in, I'm trying to think of South Dakota. If there's a need there, we can do things virtually. We can help train our mentors in a virtual fashion so that those mentors are then prepared with the curriculum we have to take into whatever organization is looking for our Character Does Matter. Can we talk about the curriculum for a minute?
Sure. We can talk about.
Okay. So, because this is one of the things, when I was little, I always wanted to be a teacher, and that never happened. Officially, you're kind of a teacher when you're a drill sergeant, but your toolbox is a little different. One of the things that I love about Travis Manion, and there's a long list of things, but one of the things I love is all of the programs that we have, our training programs, are based on positive psychology and the impact that positive psychology can have on you and your life, no matter your age. So you can have had a really poor, perhaps you feel like you're just surviving kind of experience with your life, and you engage with Travis Manion and our curriculum and the positive psychology that it's based on, and you can make a huge difference in your life or somebody else's life. So our curriculum is based on that. There's 24 character strengths that everybody has. Everybody has them in different orders, and it evolves as your life evolves based on the life events that you've had at a given time. And the curriculum that goes into and I would love your perspective on this, Amy, because I know you've used it, but what I love about the curriculum is it really engages the veteran mentor, and it engages the students or the participants. So the veteran mentor is really being a little vulnerable in that they provide examples of one of our character strengths is integrity. So Amy might go into a classroom or into an organization and say, integrity is our character strength for today. And here's an example in my life where integrity came into play and why it's important. And then we also honor fallen heroes, or a hero that demonstrates what integrity is, lived a life of integrity. So we have real life examples to bring to these kids that, you know, integrity might have just been kind of a word that somebody tossed around at them, whether they had it or they didn't have it. And when the mentor gets to go in and talk to them, it's almost a one-on-one conversation of, this is what integrity is. This is why it's important in your life. Talk to me about how you use it. Talk to me about how you can use it better. And then the very last thing is the call to action on the curriculum. So it's not just where you sort of go in and do this presentation and talk about integrity, but at the very end, there'll be a call to action, and that'll say, hey, so now this is what I recommend you do. Take this word integrity, understand what it means, and then work out a plan how you're going to demonstrate that on a daily basis. And if it's an opportunity where the mentor is going to go back multiple times, you can always follow back up on that and say, hey, how did that last call to action go? So I just feel like it's an in the moment engagement, and then there's actual activities or actual steps that person can take after the fact to make sure that they're really leaning into that particular character strength that was being discussed that day. So just so many great facets to it.
I agree. And I do think it's the interactiveness and getting the kids to participate in what they see. And even, you know, sometimes it's the relationships, and that, you know, how much effort the program has on remembering kids' names and details about them, so that it's not just a shallow touch
Yes.
point. It has a little more sustenance to it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go back a little bit to you, and then we can go back to Travis Manion.
Okay.
What is your favorite story when you were in the service, in the Army?
My favorite story. Well, I have one when I was on active duty that, and I don't want to disparage the military, because I'm a big supporter. Like, my son's in the Navy, and I really think that's a great place for him to be with that structure. But sometimes, and this happens in the corporate world as well, people get a little overwhelmed with they get a little focused, right? They get a little, what is that called? Where they have blinders on to what they're trying to accomplish. So I was at Fort Polk, and I was a radio operator, and we supported the infantry. And so anybody who knows anything about Fort Polk knows that it's all infantry except for the Signal Corps that used to be there and the food service, right? So we were in the field all the time. And it wasn't just like going out and, you know, sleeping in an RV. We actually used all of our camouflage and dug foxholes and all of that. So it was, you know, we did it. For my platoon sergeant and my first sergeant were by the book kind of NCOs. So you did everything just like you would do as if you were in actual war. So one time we went out there, and I think it was second platoon. One of the soldiers lost their M16. Woke up in the morning, and it was his M16 was not next to him in his tent, in his sleeping gear. And we were like, well, how does that happen? So our commanding officer, this was his last tour with us in the field. He was actually PCSing someplace else, and I can't remember where he's going. But he was determined that we would find that M16. He was not going to let us leave the field until it was discovered. So we spent probably 3 weeks straight in the field, I had poison sumac, which is like poison ivy or poison oak, from head to toe, with no relief from any kind of medication. And they had us chopping down trees looking for the M16. And I'm not exaggerating. And so we're like, how could an M16 get to the top of this tree in Louisiana? We just were not, weren't following the logic of our leadership on trying to find this M16. And so the only reason that we finally got to leave is that they found the weapon and it somehow was taken out, and it was in a pawn shop in Texas. And so when they found it, you know, based on serial numbers or however they tracked it, they were like, yeah, you guys obviously are not going to find it at that top of that tree because we just found it in Texas. So that's probably one of the funniest stories for me to tell, because it just, you know, there wasn't any logic. It was just the focus of that CEO that was, you know, and when you become a leader, you're like, I'm never doing anything like that. Like I cannot have blinders on and not listen to my team. And that's essentially what was going on, is that he just could not leave Fort Polk and take his new command with this black mark on his record. And so he was determined that we would somehow find this weapon by staying in the field.
That's really funny. That's really funny. So if you were to share that story in with youth, how would you frame that? Like, what character strength would you use, or
so would I be sharing it from the character strength of what I used to not get put in Fort Leavenworth because I was in trouble, or like
I don't know. Like, to me, you know, I think as the leader, it would maybe be honesty. You know, like you had said before, integrity. But, you know, the concern was the loss of a weapon, which has a lot of implications, you know.
Yes.
And I think that would be hard. And it would be hard. Like, when you think of, if you had this black mark, how long would you take it? That's incredible that this person kept you guys out there for 3 weeks because they didn't want to go forward with this black mark or whatever. And so that is, you know, that kind of shows something.
It does. And so for me, I would say the example that I probably would provide to youth is that, and I would ask them, what would you do differently? And the answer that I'd be looking for is, to your point, Amy, integrity and honesty and accountability, right? So as the commander, it evidently stopped there because he was worried about the black mark on his record. But at some point, you were thinking more about the welfare of your team, of your people, right? And their mental and physical welfare were really, really bad right then, and morale, right? It was terrible. So am I doing any good for them or for me keeping them out in the field? Because 98% of us had no idea where the weapon was. Those 2 folks probably did. So let's bring them back, and I'm accountable for this. And if it's a black mark, it's a black mark, but I've done everything I can to find it, and I need to protect my people. And to me, that's one of the biggest things I learned, because for my teams, I protect them. Now I can talk to them directly and say, how come this happened? And let's get it taken care of. But other folks can't approach them in an aggressive way, right? Because that's my team and they need to come to me and talk to me first. So I think in accountability, integrity, honesty, all probably should have come into play there.
I agree. I also, I think of my time in the military, and you probably would agree, you know, just sometimes I think that leadership is doing things, you know, where we think it's in one direction, but it is actually in another direction. Like, what if you were to find out that you were always supposed to be there for 3 extra weeks? And part of the goal was to cut down some trees. Like that would
Yeah.
be crazy maybe to the mind of a junior enlisted who wasn't privy to greater plans.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I think there's, there's always interesting things when you learn the whole picture or whatever,
Hmm.
or if if it really was to try to get the one or two soldiers to fess up, or
Yeah.
and I also think uh, I know there's plenty of times where we slept with our weapons and different things like that, which is probably an Army thing. I don't know if the Navy, the Marines, but the guys aren't here to let us know. Uh, but possibly then having an arms room, like even
Mhm.
anytime you go to the field, a temporary arms room, so people are not um,
Yeah.
the ones that are watching, their own weapon unless they're doing um, an activity or whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
But I don't know. That's funny. I wish the guys were here to say what what, it's funny though. I will say this. So when I went in the Navy Reserves in the Army, qualifying with your weapon was a big deal.
Hmm.
Everybody had to qualify, and how well you were with your weapon was a big deal. When I went
Yep.
in the Navy Reserves, there was no expectation, and I'm like, this is so strange.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Are you kidding me? We're usually on ships. Like if we're doing anything with actual weapons in our hands, so many things have gone wrong."
Yeah.
And that made me laugh, but it made sense. Okay.
It
And I'm
does
like,
make
all right.
sense. Yeah. But
And
so my son's in the Navy and he's on a submarine. And he was talking the other day when I was chatting with him. He said, "Yeah, I went out and um, he tried to qualify with his pistol. I guess they call it a pistol, but the handgun, the hand weapon, and he didn't." And I said, "Well," and he was just sort of, lackadaisical about it, like flippant. And I'm like, "You didn't? I mean, aren't you worried about not qualifying?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "Well, so the promotion that you're looking for," and he goes, "Yeah, it has nothing to do with that." And I'm like, "That is so weird," but same explanation.
yep, yep. And so I was like, okay. And so I didn't bring my glasses, and so the guy next to me, I couldn't. So I can see the target, but I couldn't see whether I was hitting the target
Yeah.
because my eyes aren't that bad, and so I couldn't see whether I was hitting the target. But it was just center mass of
Yeah.
fuzzy. And the guy
Right.
next to me got so mad because I was hitting it so well compared to him. And, but I grew
Yeah.
up, my dad, we had weapons my whole life. So um, firing um, all sorts of different weapons before I went into
Yeah.
the Army.
Into the
And so it
army.
didn't
Yeah.
matter. But I'll tell you a funny, Charlene, and we have a friend named Michael who was working with the Boy Scouts, and they had a skeet shooting contest,
Yeah.
and I had never done that. And I want to tell you that was a lot of fun, but I absolutely suck. And but I will say that every time I went out, I only went out 3 times before the event, or maybe it
Yeah.
was 2 times and then the event. Every time I went out, I was given a different weapon.
Oh, yeah.
So that was one thing. And then when we went out and we practiced, it was just like this. Like, let's see if I can do it with the camera. Just like that.
Yeah.
Was the one that we practiced on. Well, the event, we had this, and then they had ones that go this way, and then ones that go this way, and over here and over there. And I got like 30 out of 100. It was crazy.
Which is probably
Hilarious.
30 more than I would get.
Well, and it was raining. It was super funny. Like it was a
Oh,
lot of fun working with or being a part of the Boy Scouts, and because that wasn't anything that my boys were into, and so it
yeah.
was my first experience with that group and with Charlene, and she's such a
How fun.
powerhouse that
She
it was a
is.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
But
That is funny.
I was so any other stories from the military that you think would um, be fun to tell or enriching?
So many. Well, when I was so first, I guess I just want to say that the military had a huge impact on who I am today, right? So I have a ton of funny stories where I just am kind of a dork, but the ability to speak, I think, to speak to groups, to understand a mission, to stay calm. Like I know that working with folks and I was in marketing at State Farm, right? So we're not saving lives, not killing anybody, we're not doing anything, not doing brain surgery. And I just remember people would, if something changed or something had to happen quickly, or they would just get really feathered out. And I'm just like, we're not saving lives, guys. It's going to happen. It'll be fine. So I feel like that demeanor comes from probably knowing what an actual important mission is versus, the strategy and everything with marketing is important. But it probably does not equate to, am I preparing these soldiers to go to war and stay alive? Right. So being able to understand the difference there and when to get wound up and when not to, I think was huge for me. But I do have a couple of funny ones. I have a qualifying story like you. So I wear glasses but I, especially with your headgear, those glasses just don't fit right, And so when we were out at the firing range, I would put my glasses in my pocket. And then when we'd have to, fire our weapon, I'd put my glasses back on. And at one point I said, okay, I had my glasses on and they said, okay, let's walk down and take a look at the targets. And I was like, okay. And I reached up and and it's my right eye that I can't really see out of, which is also my firing eye. So I reached up and there was no lens in my glasses. It was in my pocket. So I'd been qualifying the whole time without any correction on. So I qualified. I did well without my glasses because, as you said, center mass of fuzzy, right?
As long as we know what we're looking or right? We have determined that is what we're firing at.
That's right. The other funny story I have is when I was going to drill sergeant school, part of it was up here at Fort Lewis, and it was the last part of it. And the last part of it, you go out to the field, out to one of these hills out here, and you dig in. So there's already trenches that you could walk in and sandbags, and you are on guard all night against the opposing forces, which would be the cadre teaching the drill sergeant school. So all of our drill sergeants were out there trying to, break our lines and get in and capture us, if you will. And so my friend and I, that they called us the Twisted Sisters as drill sergeants together. I'm not sure why they would do that, but we told our team leader that there was like 2 hasty positions out by a big boulder, and we said, hey, we're gonna go out by the boulder. There's a couple of hasty positions, and we're gonna keep all the opposing forces away. We'll be like the first line of contact. And he said, yeah, that's great. Well, at some point, the commandant of the school was walking through, and he said, hey, do you have anybody out about so far? And our leader, our team leader said, oh no, because he thought that he was trying to get information and infiltrate us. And so he said, no, I don't have anybody out there, when in fact we were there. Sergeant Burgess and I were there. And so he said, okay, cool. Well, they let off a, oh heck, I just lost the name of it. Big bang, flashlight.
A cannon? Live rounds?
Not live rounds, but almost. And so you hear it whistling, right? So it's coming in and you're like, oh. So because I evidently lost my brain at that point, I'm looking around for it. So it flashes and I go blind. And so Sergeant Burgess is trying, she's like, are you okay? Are you okay? But I can't see, so I'm not sure if I'm okay. Because she was smart and closed her eyes and ducked her head, because that's what you're taught to do. And so we went running. I finally would say, yeah, I'm good. So we go running back and we're yelling the running password so that we don't get shot at. And they're like, shoot them, shoot them. We're like, we're on your side. So we ended up getting the Elmer Fudd Award for that particular experience.
That's funny.
Yeah, I have only funny stories to tell. So,
So working for State Farm, actually, let's circle back to that. Did you ever employ soldiers that or service members, and did you when you saw them going through your hiring process, what advice would you have for somebody who's transitioning?
Yeah, great question. So especially when I moved up here, the number of folks coming through that had, were veterans or prior service, significantly more than the number of prior service down in Salem, Oregon. So I actually was an agency recruiter for a while. So I would go out and talk to people about coming to State Farm and being agents, so owning their own small businesses. And I have two folks off the top of my head I can think of that were right out of Fort Lewis. One was a major and one was an E6, I think, when he left, an E6 or an E7. And one is a State Farm agent just up the road from me. And one went all the way up through a leadership program with State Farm, was an agent, went into leadership. And then he's from the South, so he wanted to move back home. And now he's an agent in Louisiana again. So the things that you look for, right, are their leadership. They've been taught how to lead, whether they're in an authority position or not. So I would talk to them about that. I would talk to them about one of the things that is fairly normal for folks when they become a State Farm agent, a small business owner, is they know how to sell and they know how to manage like the finances of their business, but they don't know how to lead their team and hold them accountable. But the folks that have been in the military understand that. They understand the importance of saying, hey, Julie, this is our mission. This is what we're going to accomplish. This is your part of that mission, right? So that it is very clear, the expectations are clear. And if it's not happening, then there's a very deliberate conversation that can be had because you've already set those very clear expectations. And I would say that the folks that have a military background are far better and far more successful at having those conversations, both in the beginning, on the front end, and on the back end, than folks that haven't had a military background because they're just not accustomed to the teamwork, the accountability, the leadership without being in a position of authority. And so I would coach to that.
Very cool.
And leverage those characteristics.
Do you have friends from in the military to this
Currently?
day?
Yep. So Sergeant Burgess, my twisted sister counterpart, we're still friends. She and her husband, he was a drill sergeant with us too. And then he eventually went into recruiting. They lived all over the world because they were active duty. But I just talked to her a couple weeks ago. Yeah, we talk all the time. She just lives down in Oregon again. I have a friend that lives on the coast in Oregon that I was a drill sergeant with. Let me think. A gal that I was stationed at Fort Polk with. She's over in Saudi Arabia right now working as a civilian. Another guy I know lives in Maryland. I've shared resources with him as he's gone through a couple of different career changes. Onward to Opportunity is one of those. So yeah, longtime friends. And one of the things I love is that you don't have to talk to them all the time. And then when you do have the opportunity to connect, it's like you never stop talking. You never, there's no gap in time. So
I agree. So because your son's in the Navy, Army Navy game, who do you cheer for?
The Army, definitely the Army. Yeah.
Very
and
good.
Yeah. So we throw some smack back and forth, but I'm the mom, so I get to win regardless.
All right. Do you have one last story to leave us with?
I really want a really impactful story for you. So I have one, and it's from basic training, and it has stayed with me my entire life because I think it makes me always work harder and expect more of myself. So I had 3 drill sergeants when I was in basic training, 2 males and a female. And the female drill sergeant is the one that inspired me to become a drill sergeant, because I believed that I could be an effective drill sergeant without using the techniques that she used, which I didn't agree with. And because females just have a reputation in the military, and she carried that reputation on, and I just felt like we needed to fight against that reputation of how females were. So that was motivation there to become a drill sergeant. And then, but this other drill sergeant, he never said much, and he was always sneaking up on you, and he was always, whenever he was around, he would drop me for push-ups. I could be doing nothing, and he would drop me for push-ups. So we make it to graduation, and he has charge of quarters that night. And so one of the other CQ runners, whose drill sergeant had it during the day, came down and said, "Hey, you and drill sergeant needs to go up, and he needs a CQ runner." And I was like, well, I'm not going to tell him, because if I tell him, he's going to tell me that I have to be CQ runner, and I do not want to work with him tonight, because graduation was the next day. And he just was not very nice. So I ended up having to tell him, and he looked at me, and I said, drill sergeant, and they say you need a CQ runner. And he looked at me and he goes, "What are you waiting for, private?" And I was like, "All right, drill sergeant." So I went up there, and I was his CQ runner for the night. And it's kind of like a movie, like it's a story that you would hear, on TV or something. Because when we were up at the headquarters, he called me into the office, and he said, he asked me if basic training had been easy for me. And I didn't think that it had. I mean, I didn't, like, there were some unfortunate things that happened that upset me, but it hadn't been super easy, and it hadn't been awful. It just had sort of been, right? And I said, "No, I don't think it's been easy, drill sergeant." And he said, "Well, do you know why I'm always calling you out?" And I said, "Because you don't like me, drill sergeant." And he said, "No, because you can do more and do better. You have the potential to accomplish so much more, and I expect that out of you." And in the moment, I was just like in disbelief, because the way he went about it, it was a negative motivation. So I was always trying to prove myself to him. But I don't know that it had the great impact that he was looking for. But that night, after he said that to me, and I went about my way, because I was done and somebody took over for me, that has stayed with me all these years, going, okay, high expectations, Julie. You need to achieve the high expectations and not just skate through things. So.
Very good. Ed's here, so I'm going to add him.
Oh, hi, Ed.
Well, hello. Sorry, I'm really late today.
I mean,
I was in the waiting room listening. It was a
okay.
great conversation. I was just sitting here.
Thanks.
No, they asked me to host a radio show locally, a local talk radio, for the last hour. So I did that,
nice.
Which is a lot easier than people. I mean, it's a lot harder than what people think it is. So, because it's a monologue, It's not really like you're talking to people. So of course I had people call in, make sure it wasn't so bad, but this is about me. This is about you. This is all about you. So I don't want to interrupt what you were talking about. I'm going to put her this way.
Okay.
Amy, I'm sorry, Amy, I took over.
That is all right. I already screwed up in the beginning. I hit start, but apparently I was supposed to hit something else for the video.
It started. It's going.
No, okay. But I mean, the intro video didn't come on.
That's okay. It's not you have to actually click it yourself under the brand. Not everybody needs to know that, but basically that's okay, because it was your show today. It's all you.
She did a great job.
Yeah, she did.
Right.
Yeah.
She did a great
He
job.
doesn't know. He's been here for 2 seconds, but
You didn't even know I was down there. So until I text you, because she doesn't look all over. She's just like staring at you. She was in awe.
Yeah.
Amy, give me some push-ups. Amy, give me some push-ups.
Okay, listen. I was also dropped on a regular. I was dropped so often in basic and AIT. By the time I left, I could do well over 60 push-ups in 2 minutes.
Yes.
With my elbows back. It was not a problem, sir.
Well, yeah,
Amen.
just keep moving forward and stop worrying about it.
That's right.
You did have a comment that I don't know if you put that up on there. So this is why I was like, should I come in here? I'm not a lady. So,
nice.
and then this one from her.
Awesome.
Great job.
Nice.
You guys did an amazing job without me. Appreciate it. And Amy, great job and I don't want to take away from it, but great job today for doing all that.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Now,
and I don't know what questions to ask because I came in so late. So
okay, so we covered she does the Army in the Army Navy game, even though her son's in the Navy, opposite of you, where your son's in the Army.
Right. I still do the Navy, even though my son's in the Army.
Well, that would be the same. She does the Army, even though her son's in the Navy.
Right. That's how it's supposed to be. Yeah.
You don't vote for
my wife does the Army for her son.
Oh.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
She used to, do the Navy, but she's one of those who picks her football team by whoever's the quarterback. And if he moves to the next team, that's her next team.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. I don't think that is. I'm a Broncos fan, period.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm a Seahawks fan.
What are you, Julie?
Well, I'm a big Aaron Rodgers fan.
Yeah.
And then I'm also a big fan of the, I can't think of his name, but the San Francisco quarterback.
Which one? The current one or the old one? Oh,
no, the current one.
Yeah. And you would think I'd know that, but I don't watch 49ers play.
I just watched their quarterback. That's all.
All right. So I'm sure Amy asked this question. What do you still use from that you got in the military? What learned from the military? What do you still use? Did you ask that question, Amy?
I did ask that question.
Okay.
And I had 2 answers.
2 answers. And we don't need to get in. I'll watch it. So thank you.
Okay.
What else, Amy?
I asked her about, because she worked for the same company for 32 years. Then when she saw military, especially like transitioning military, what she felt they brought to the table. And she gave a really good answer there, which was nice. And then we also talked a lot about the Travis Manion Foundation, working with veterans and kids across the nation. We did.
So the question that you didn't ask is probably, why did your son pick the Navy?
I did not.
No. So interesting, Ed. Because can I swear on this show?
Yeah, of course you can. And I'll tell you the reason my son picked the Army. I have no problem, so.
Okay. So Jacob actually did talk to the Army recruiter first. And then he chatted with the Navy guy for a minute. And then when the Army recruiter saw that he had chatted with the Navy guy, he started pressuring him. And Jacob said, "You're a real dick, man." And then he went with the Navy. So I said, "All right, I get it."
See, my son. So I actually took my son to the recruiting office, and we talked to the Army first. And he actually first went to the Air Force, but the Air Force wouldn't guarantee his job. He wanted to be a medic, and then he found out about airborne, and then he had to be airborne because he gets $250 extra for jump pay and all this other stuff. Just because then that killed his mom, of course. But then he was supposed to go to, he wanted to be a ranger, and then luckily he's colorblind, so that's out of the picture. Yeah.
That's some crazy training right there.
Yeah. So he went to the Air Force, and I said, let's just go talk to Army. And then we talked to Army. They guaranteed his job, guaranteed what he wanted. And then he's like, should I go talk to the Navy? I'm like, no, because you're not going to be as a corpsman in the Navy like I was, which meant I saw a ship, but I never was stationed on a ship. I went to physical therapy, so I didn't have to be on a ship. That was the whole purpose. I said, you're not going to have that luxury. You're going to. And plus I was stationed with the Marines, so it's a little different.
Yeah.
So he loves the Army. He loves the airborne, loves the jumping out of the planes and all that fun stuff as a medic, and he's doing really well.
Awesome.
So and Army does really well for their people. They move up in advancement so much faster than any of the other services. So
yeah. Although I will say Jacob's moved up, I thought, fairly fast, but he's a nuke on a submarine.
Oh, yeah. Well,
so he has.
There's not a lot of sub nuke people who want to be on subs, so more power to them.
Yeah. Not what I say to him, but okay.
That's okay. Our kids make their own mistakes, just like we did. So.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
So I'm sorry to come in so late. But I wanted to jump in here and give support to Amy and you, Julie, to thank you for coming on and all that stuff. I'm not trying to get rid of you. I don't know where we are. Are you done, Amy? You got more questions for Julie?
We just need to do a big plug for Travis Manion. That's all. I know you're one guy that was on here the other day doesn't do plugs, but I would like to do a plug for Travis Manion.
No, you can. We have no problem if you're talking about a nonprofit or how they help vets or that kind of stuff. We want you to talk about that. One of our biggest things is to make people understand this is a hub for people to get information, to know where to go to get that help, and that's why we want people to talk about what that is. So please talk.
Yeah. So I guess the last thing I would leave you with Travis Manion then is it's not just about, obviously our primary deal is connecting veterans with their community, providing a purpose for them, creating community for them. And we have studies that show that that's actually proven as a part of the work with Travis Manion. But there's also opportunity for mental health healing and interaction. So whatever the need is, I would just ask them to reach out to their regional manager. You can find us on travismanion.org and connect with us, because there's an opportunity or a service available for any of the needs.
And so what does Travis Manion need from other people who want to help out?
So all kinds of things as far as one thing, mentors.
No, I'm just saying, what do you need?
We need veteran mentors, inspired civilians, and
can I go back to that veteran mentor? What do you want? What kind of mentor do you need for veterans to be part of it?
AKA a volunteer.
Oh, is that what that means? A mentor is an AKA volunteer? Okay.
It is a volunteer.
So they volunteer and they mentor the youth. We're connecting them with the youths.
Sorry, that's my cousin Vinny. Sorry.
Yes, it is.
Well, and I'll elaborate on that. So what's nice when you volunteer with Travis Manion really wants to make sure that you have the
sorry, Julie, I want to clear on the spot.
No apology.
You have the tools to be able to articulate working with kids. And so you go through, like she had mentioned earlier, finding out what your character strengths were, which were really funny to me, because mine just basically said mentor in my mind, because it was honesty. It was like honesty, passion, and frankness. I'm getting them wrong, but it just made me laugh. And Julie's is actually honesty is one of her first ones. But being able to talk to kids. And so you go through this training to be a volunteer, to become a mentor. And there's so many other organizations, almost all the organizations that I've volunteered with haven't necessarily had this program with this much sustenance to ensure that how we interact with the youth or youths is really, on point. And so that these relationships that we work with and we with these amazing youth all across the US are really good, and that our veteran mentors are on point and ready for some really great discussions, and there to really impact the lives, and not there in a shallow sense, but diving deep in the way that Travis Manion feels will impact these kids. And therefore, that's why they're also impacted.
All right. So, and how do these kids become part of this? Yeah, I know you already told this, but since I'm here now, I won't. Sorry.
How the kids become part of it?
Yeah, so how do they find did we talk about this already?
Nope.
Nope.
It's a great question.
So a couple of different ways. You are full of them, Ed. Couple of different ways. One is I can go out and I reach out to different community members. So there's a number of nonprofits that I'm working with here in the Tacoma, Washington area, actually across Washington State, and high schools, JROTC. So there's some natural alignments there for our character does matter stuff. The other way it can happen is there's someone in the community that hears about us and says, and they go to our website and they send a note and say, hey, we'd really love to have I'd like to talk to you about your program and bringing it to my organization, whether it's Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, a church group, a camp, whatever it might be. And the thing that folks that are usually really surprised to find out is that the investment that they have is just their time. There's no cost. They don't have to teach the classes. They don't have to supply the materials if there's material, handouts or, swag, whatever. We bring it all, Ed. We bring it all.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Especially nothing's better than hearing your own name too. If you're in sales, you know that. Always call the person by their name. All right. I that's the only questions I had was just a brief thing. How do they find the youths of America to be part of this? Because it sounds like a great organization. I just wish I could have been here for the whole thing. I apologize. So, well,
you can watch it. And then if you have more questions, you can just ask Amy.
No, I actually have your email, so I can email you.
That's right.
And your phone number. I'm sure it's on the email. So don't worry. I know how to get a hold of people.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. You're resourceful. But we had a weapon question for you. What was the question, Amy?
Okay. What was, so in the Army, you have to qualify with your weapon. And it's a really big thing. Like you couldn't really, get promoted and go further with your career without having a certain level of expertise.
Right.
But in the Navy Reserves, when I was in it, was just like super lackadaisical. Most everybody, but
okay. I was in boot camp. I didn't shoot a weapon. All right. We didn't do that. Or in the Navy, you're not going to bring out a weapon on a ship and shoot somebody unless you're an MP. It's not the same. Now, my son, this is funnier than anything. My son shot master. He's got the right?
Oh, wow.
And then they took him out. So that was target shooting, right? He's colorblind. He can't see greens. All greens look gray. So they took him out on the field and he's supposed to be shooting. This is after boot camp and he's missing. And the guy comes up and he's like, you're a master shoot. You're not hitting. He goes, I can't see it. I'm colorblind. It's in the trees. I can't see the trees and the grass. It's all the same. So yeah. So target shooting, he's a master, but that's why I don't have to worry about him being a ranger because it's really hard. I can't see him. They're all gray.
Can we ask the bad guys to wear a different color?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Hey, thanks for having me on, you guys.
Yeah, so I'm just glad. That was the other problem when he was joining is the fact that he was colorblind, and we wanted to make sure. Well, medic, it's either clear fluid or dark fluid. You're okay, right? So, yeah, that's it. It's the same. It doesn't matter what color it is. What color? Red. It doesn't matter. It's coming out of you. If you can see through it, it's a spinal fluid. So,
I'm glad they worked that out for him.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Well, and that's the problem is like if you do any charting or anything, right? And you have different colors, he's not going to know the difference, right?
No.
So, yeah. And it's just that one color, just enough. And it's that he always wore the same clothes all the time.
So I will share this one. Both my sons and my dad are colorblind. And my dad and my oldest son, and there's not just it's almost like there's 3 types of colorblindness. So you have red, green, yellow, blue, but then there's 2 different spheres in the red, green. Mm-hmm. So my younger son is less colorblind than my dad and my oldest son. And so I used to do all the tricks to my kids. My son, I remember my son came home. He goes, "What is the color pink? Like, why is it such a big deal?" Because he had pink. I had put him in like this entire pink outfit.
That's so mean.
God, no wonder you're lonely all the time when your family doesn't come over. My kids don't call me on Christmas anymore. I wonder why. Amy.
That's awesome.
So I remember once they thought one of them thought the Hulk was just a really big black man.
I'm sure maybe he is in some circles. What are you guys talking about? I'm just saying black and white TV. He would be black and white on black and white TV. Hello.
He would be, yeah.
Yes. Geez, what were you thinking? Get your minds out of the gutter.
And my daughter, that's 23, whenever we would tell her about black and white, she thought that the actual world was black and white in the black and white days, not just the TV. No color.
And how's she doing in school?
She was A's, right?
Yeah. You went to public school. She got straight A's. See, you missed all this fun without me. Look at that. If you don't have fun, it's not worth doing. So
that's exactly right.
All right. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your story today. I really appreciate it. And I definitely will be watching it and seeing where Amy messed up today so I can talk to her about that, have her do some push-ups.
Nice. It was super cool of you guys to have me. I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. And I'm sorry all of our hosts weren't here today for you. We like to be all here. But unfortunately, that's why we have multiple hosts.
That's a good plan.
Yeah. And we're always looking for more. Hint, hint. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
That was a wave goodbye.
I'm out of here before they sign me up. All right. You gonna kick us out of here, Amy, or you want me to do it?
Why don't you do it?
All right. So all you got to do is say, all right, thanks for watching. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, share, and, like us. And we appreciate it. And Julie, thank you for being on today. And don't go anywhere. I'm going to end the broadcast. Thanks for everybody for watching. And Amy, thanks for taking care of it today. Really appreciate it.
I'll see you.